Okay, today we are going to start cutting out our layers for our Jen Stark relief using all of our painted papers that we made. So when we're finished, it'll look something like this, and it will be three-dimensional and kind of pop off of the page. So the first thing that you are going to do, and I'm going to use construction paper to show you the steps so it's a little bit easier for you to see on video. So the first thing that you want to do is take your first layer that you want to be your biggest layer. So we're going to work from our largest layer to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So you're going to take a pencil and you're going to draw that drippy kind of effect that Jen Stark does. And you want to have some variety in there. So don't make it all the same, make some shorter, make some longer. And this first step, you want it to take up almost the whole piece of paper. So start on the side or start right on the edge. Make your drips come almost all the way down, and then you are going to cut that out. So when you're done, it looks something like this. Okay, so this is the largest layer. It's actually going to go on the bottom of the design. Then what you're going to do is take your next layer and you're going to lay it on top of your painting, and you are going to trace it, okay, on the edge. And when you do this, you want to be careful that you're not drawing onto your painting. I would press light in case you do make a little mistake and go onto your painting. You don't want that to show, and you want to make sure that it's easy to erase in case that it does. And it's not important that you get right directly on it. I went off the edge just a little bit. That's fine. It's okay because you're going to actually cut this out smaller. So now that I have this traced, what I'm going to do is cut out, but a little bit smaller. So when I'm cutting, I want to cut about here and not cut right on my pencil line. So it looks like this. You're going to cut inside of your pencil line. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. We want to have that same style as Jen Stark, but each of your layers can be slightly different just to give it a little bit more variety. Just make sure you're not cutting on your pencil line. So you can see what happened. I cut it a little bit smaller. Okay, and save all these scraps. We're going to save the scraps, and other people can use your scraps, or you might want to use your scraps. So it looks like this. It's a little bit smaller each time. I can see my first layer underneath and then my second layer. So now I'm going to take my second layer and I'm going to put it on my next painted paper, and I am going to do the same thing. So I'm going to trace it on the outside. Again, doesn't have to be exactly perfect. And I am going to cut that out. Again, when I cut it out, you probably can't see my lines. I'm going to trace over it with a Sharpie so you can see it a little bit better on video. When you cut it out, you're cutting it out a little bit smaller. So I'm going to cut out not on my pencil line, a little bit smaller than my pencil line. And you can give it some variety. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the layer underneath it. And again, save your scraps. You might use your scraps later on. Somebody else can use your scraps. Okay, so I'm going to make a pile of my scraps, and I'm going to make a separate pile of my layers. So layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. You can see how it's changing just a little bit each time. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to take the last layer that I just made, the smallest layer. I'm going to lay that onto my next painted paper, and I'm going to trace it again. Doesn't have to be perfectly on your line. So now I'm going to cut that out a little bit smaller. And my design is getting less interesting as when it was when I first started. So maybe this time I'm going to add some more kind of drips inside of it just to give it a little bit more interest. Remember, those kinds of decisions are up to you as the artist, but the more details you put in here, the more interesting your project is. Okay, so you can see my layers are building. So now I'm gonna do the same thing again. I'm gonna take this, I'm going to trace it onto my next layer. Okay, so once I have all of my layers cut out, I'm just gonna kind of line everything up and sort of spot check it and see how it looks. And I might need to do some trimming. I might need to make this a little more interesting if it doesn't have a lot of interest going on. But I'm just gonna kind of spot check it, and I want to change this a little, so I'm gonna cut it, make it a little more curvy and interesting over here. Okay, now when you start stacking this, the first thing that you're going to do is grab a piece of black paper. Okay, so this paper, this underneath paper, is called railroad board, and it's a little bit thicker and heavier, so it will be able to hold all of this together and make it a little bit stronger. So this is what the railroad board looks like. So now what I'm going to do, I'm gonna keep my layers all together, and I'm just gonna peel back the first layer. When I glue this first layer down, I have some choices. I can make this layer pop out, or I can make this layer flat against the railroad board. So it's up to you. But you wanna make sure that you're gluing it down the right way. So I have this all lined up. Now I'm just gonna peel all those top layers. I'm gonna flip this over, and I'm gonna make sure I'm gluing the back of it, because if you glue the wrong side, it's not going to work out for the rest of your design. Notice I'm doing just a thin line of glue. We don't need too much glue. It makes a mess. It's not good craftsmanship, and it is wasteful. Then I'm gonna flip this over and line it up before I glue it down. I'm lining it up at the top so it's nice and straight and even, and I'm making sure that I have the same amount of space on either side. Okay, and if I do that nice and neat, I shouldn't have glue all over my project. Now, the next layers are gonna be your relief, where the relief comes from. Relief means that it's kind of popping off of your paper. So I'm gonna line everything up and just take that next layer. Now we're gonna use pieces of cardboard for that part. And I've cut cardboard pieces for you. And what you wanna do is cut these smaller. You don't need to use a whole big giant piece of cardboard like this. We're just gonna cut some smaller pieces. So maybe I want a piece at the top up here. I can cut this a little bit thinner. And when I glue this down, what I'm gonna do first is flip, and again, just a skinny line of glue. If you have too much glue, you're gonna have a mess to work with. So I'm gonna glue this down and hold it for a minute. And you wanna do all the way around. You can leave some spaces in between. It doesn't have to be completely all the way around. But you wanna make sure that it's going to pop out and not sink back down onto the paper. So I'm just putting some pieces along the edges. I can cut these a little bit smaller. Okay, like that. Now, your next step is to put glue just on these pieces of cardboard, because this is the only thing that's going to be touching the paper. When you flip this over, do it very carefully so your cardboard pieces don't fall off. And again, you're going to line it up at the top, make sure it's all lined up at the bottom, and then press that down. And you just gotta kind of see where your cardboard is and just press it down where the cardboard is. So now you're gonna do the same thing with your next layer. So I'm gonna line them back up, take off my top layers, flip over my next layer, and cut my cardboard. And again, you don't need too much cardboard. I'm gonna do a longer piece at the top because I want it pretty sturdy there. Hold it down nice and secure, and then cut your extra pieces. And kind of just line it up along the edges so that the whole thing will pop out for you. You can layer these too if you want to have a little more relief sticking out. You can layer your cardboard and make your cardboard thicker also. So that is up to you as the artist. Also, make sure you can see this would have been off the edge of my construction paper, my painted paper. So I made that a little bit smaller. Craftsmanship, neatness, we don't want to have the cardboard sticking out. We should not see the cardboard from the front of our design. Okay, now I'm just going to put some lines of glue on this. A little bit of glue goes a long way. We don't need a lot of glue to make this work. Now I'm gonna flip it over, line everything up before I glue it down, and then just press very gently on my cardboard pieces. So you're gonna build each of your layers as you go. And in between classes, what you wanna do is make sure all of these loose pieces go in your supply bag so they don't get lost. So you're gonna finish up the last of your layers. Okay, so once you finish all of your layers and you have all of your color families on there, what you want to do is kind of think about any extras that you want to add. So do you want to add more layers? Do you want some more layers on top? You can repeat with your scraps. You have all of your scraps. You could even share scraps with someone else. Maybe I'm going to add a few more layers here. But those layers don't have to be cut out exactly the same. So maybe here I'm just going to make some smaller layers with a different color family so that it stands out. We want some contrast. Contrast means they are opposite and different and they stand out. So maybe I'm going to do a smaller piece that fits in here, and I want to check everything before I glue it down. And then maybe I'll do a different color family on this one, another color family that stands out, so that you can see it. So I'm going to use and make a smaller one over there. And again, I'm just kind of layering it and thinking about my composition. Composition is how we lay things out on our paper. Maybe it needs to be a little bit longer. And again, you can pop these out, you can make them flat, you could put another layers on top of there. Maybe you want to use Sharpie and add details to it. It's up to you. You're the artist, so you decide how you want your whole piece to look. Composition, we call that. So when I'm finished, it looks like this. And you can see on some of my layers, I even did 3 layers of cardboard on here. So I really wanted some of my layers to pop out and be even more 3-dimensional. When you're finished, make sure that you put your name on the black paper with a charcoal pencil or one of the metallics so that it stands out.